Misconception number 9. No one has AIDS in Morocco, or SIDA doesn't exist in my town, or Morocco, so we don't have to be concerned, or AIDS disease of quote-unquote others, it comes from the outside, or sexual problems are something Muslim countries don't have to deal with, only Western European and other African countries do. Wrong, of course it does. How do we convince people? Alert them to any of the studies we've already explained, or explain that there wouldn't be active in-country organizations if any of these things were true. I'd offer them the UN AIDS profile on HIV and AIDS in Morocco and explain that this doesn't even begin to show the untested cases. I'd also reiterate that they can and should still keep protecting themselves from HIV and AIDS by protecting themselves from the multitude of other STIs with safe sex and non-risky behavior. Whether or not the origins come from outside Morocco, Moroccans now have the illness, and all of us should proceed with protecting ourselves accordingly. Misconception number 10. You can tell by looking at someone if they have HIV/AIDS. You cannot tell by looking at a person if they have HIV or AIDS, or for that matter, any other STI except for perhaps herpes during an outbreak. Tests have to be done. A person can be completely asymptomatic with any of the illnesses mentioned in any of these videos. Misconception 11, it cannot happen to me. Unfortunately, this is a misconception we have in America as well. HIV, AIDS, and STIs can happen to absolutely anyone who partakes in the modes of transmission, i.e. risky sex, needle use, breast milk, birthing, unsterilized blood transfusions. Misconception 12. HIV is spread through contaminated ketchup, and that's why the percentage of folks in Agadir who have HIV is higher than elsewhere. HIV can only be transmitted through the ways I've reiterated 24 times. It can't live in any non-biological liquid. HIV does not survive long outside the human body, such as on surfaces, and it cannot reproduce. It is not spread by air or water, insects including mosquitoes or ticks, saliva, tears, or sweat. There are no documented cases of HIV being transmitted by spitting. Casual contact like shaking hands or sharing dishes, closed mouth or social kissing, toilet seats. Except for rare cases in which children consumed food that was pre-chewed by an HIV-infected caregiver, HIV has not been known to spread through food. The virus does not live long outside the body again, and you cannot get it from consuming food handled by an HIV-infected person, even if the food contained small amounts of HIV-infected blood or semen. Exposure to air, heat from cooking, and stomach acid would all destroy the virus, i.e. you cannot get HIV or AIDS from Agadir ketchup. Misconception 13. SIDA only happens to immoral people who are being cursed by Allah, or have sex outside of wedlock too young, or love leads to sex and sex leads to AIDS if you aren't married, or I can't get SIDA or STI because I'm married or waiting until marriage, or SIDA is something to punish males who have sex with males and the promiscuous, it's their problem. This is similar to an earlier misconception, but the most important thing that we can suggest here is that over 50% of new infections were women, and not just sex workers, and over half of those, actually over 70% of those new infections were traced to an infected spouse. The transmission is in all directions, including between heterosexual married couples. People can get infected from their spouses with any of the STIs we've mentioned, even if their spouses were faithful, but the STI was dormant for a while. Everyone should get tested. Misconception 14. The pull-out method always works to prevent pregnancy, and HIV, and AIDS, and STIs. The effectiveness of the pull-out method is an important and common concept to think about when choosing it as a birth control method. It is effective, but it is more effective when it is done correctly, and it is not effective 100% of the time. Of every 100 women whose partners use withdrawal, 4 will become pregnant each year if they always did it correctly. Of every 100 women whose partners use withdrawal, 27 will become pregnant each year if they don't always do it correctly. What that means is the pull-out method does not always work to prevent pregnancy. What's more important is that it does not protect against STIs at all. For those having sex, condoms must always be used to protect against STDs. Abstinence, or not having sex at all, is the only method that always prevents pregnancy and STDs. Misconception number 15. It's okay to reuse a condom or use the same condom for oral, vaginal, and anal sex, especially if you rinse it, or if it's a male having sex with male couple, to share the same condom on each other during sex. The answer is an emphatic no. Yes, you could wash them, and yes, they are made of strong material, but there are just too many variables that decrease the effectiveness if you reuse a condom. For instance, you might not get the condom clean enough, and the more you handle a condom, the more chance there is that you're damaging it.
Created using Powtoon.